Does your partner need therapy? Maybe. Would your partner benefit from therapy? Absolutely.
In reality, actually, like, yes, that might be the case for some people, but there's a large majority and increasing numbers of people who are going to therapy proactively to work through, yes, past challenges, past issues, but also to kind of help them add a tool to their tool belt. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and conscious individuals from all over the world, welcome back to the one and only Conscious Couples podcast. Thank you again for tuning in. We have a very special episode for you today, episode number 53. 53 weeks in a row.
Woo!
Conscious Couples podcast. 53.
Yeah, baby.
Does your partner need therapy? Before we jump into this episode, as always, huge shout out and thank you to the Next Level Podcast Solutions team for producing this show, audio, video, everything in between. Thank you. As always, sweetheart, what is your intention for today's episode?
My intention for our listeners in this episode today is to help them know when it is the right time to have that conversation with their partners, because specifically what we plan to get into on this episode is really just addressing this question: does your partner need therapy? And to be able to share our personal experience and what we have gone through and found to be really helpful with other couples as well. So that's my intention for this episode.
Okay, so when Emilia and I first met, I had kind of known this intuitively, and we've learned this over the years, which is, I bought her a necklace essentially when I asked her to be with me, and it's 2 infinity symbols, and in the center is a diamond. And I remember when we first started dating, I said, I think that you're ahead of me in the inner work. I don't think, I'm certain. And I think that I might be ahead of you in the outer work. I'm also a lot older. And by outer work, what I mean is the ability to understand the economy and business and external results and math and numbers and structure and infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. And then when it comes to the inner work, I kind of intuitively could tell you were going to help me with that. And you have been. And obviously there's a little bit of both. Sometimes you help me with the external and I help you with the internal, but for the most part, it's been you helping me with my inner world and me helping you manifest your inner world into the external world. So without getting too esoteric here, Emilia has been essentially doing inner work pretty much her entire life. And I think that I want to mention something else here as well. And on this podcast episode in particular, I think that I want to be vulnerable and honest with the listeners about the reluctance that I've sensed from men in particular when it comes to therapy. And that's something that I know you've witnessed as well. And for whatever reason, men have this, we can't even ask for directions, never mind get a therapist, right? And that's a joke and I'm being playful with it. But there's a part of men that want to do things on their own. And another thing I want to share as well, I have a theory. When young women are growing up and they're little girls, they have diaries. That's like a common thing. I'm writing in my diary. And I wish as a little boy I was encouraged to have a diary, because you write down your feelings, you self-reflect, you are much more self-aware, you're talking about your feelings, you're thinking about your feelings, you're contemplating your feelings, you're writing your feelings down, maybe you're gratituding, whatever, gratitude journaling. And after 26, I went all in on self-improvement and I started doing the inner work every single day. And I wish that I had started out in life doing that as a man. And so Emilia and I, fast forward, we're 3 years into our relationship. We're growing like crazy, both internally and externally. And Emilia sits me down and essentially says, I think you're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. I've been doing therapy with my therapist for years. And there's all these amazing modalities. There's internal family systems, and there's cognitive behavioral therapy, and there's acceptance and commitment therapy. And I think you're just leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. And I think it would be awesome if you were to get a therapist because you had a challenging childhood and this would help. And it sat on the whiteboard for quite some time. And there was this one therapist in particular that I interviewed on the Hyperconscious podcast way back that I really, really wanted to work with. And you had said internal family systems was a modality that would be really useful, and it has been unbelievable. And so anyways, I have a therapist. Her name's Carol, and it's been truly magnificent. And then fast forward, even though it sat on the whiteboard for a while, even though it was really hard for me to do this, I ended up coming to you and saying, thank you so much for giving me the nudge that I needed, the love nudge. I was going to say push, but I think love nudge is...
It was a love nudge.
It was a love nudge more than a push. And I really came to thank you because now not only am I empowered at a whole nother level, now that I understand myself at a way deeper level, but I'm also doing IFS all the time in my coaching, not as a clinician, but as a coach. I'm now able to talk about some of the things that I'm learning in therapy with so many different people. And so it's empowered me to such a great extent. And that's what I want to share on this episode essentially is, does your partner need therapy? Maybe. Would your partner benefit from therapy? Absolutely.
Right.
And so what's your perspective, sweetheart?
Yeah. This question, I think, I am under the belief system that everyone can benefit from going to therapy and having a good therapist. I know that there are some really, there are many people that have struggled in therapy and who haven't benefited from therapy, and that we are coming off so many generational stigmas around mental health and mental illnesses and psychotherapy and all these modalities that exist in mental health. Getting help is, like you said, it's challenging, especially for gender norms like men, to reach out for help and say that I'm struggling, because what has to happen is you face a very vulnerable moment of your existence where you have to realize that you need someone's help to get you to where you want to be. And I think that that hits the ego at an identity level, right? Like, what if I
am I inadequate if I can't do it myself?
Exactly. Yeah. And I was just going to say that, like, what does this mean about me? What does this mean about my existence? What does this mean about my identity as a man, as a masculine, as fill in the blank, right? So when we seek out help for all of this, you know, kind of like verbiage around mental health and mental illness, right? Therapy has been made out to be something that's really bad, and only people who have real severe problems and illnesses go to therapy. Where in reality, actually, like, yes, that might be the case for some people, but there's a large majority and increasing numbers of people who are going to therapy proactively to work through, yes, past challenges, past issues, but also to kind of help them add a tool to their tool belt to be able to really combat the challenges that we experience and face in life. So with that, I really believe in therapy. I know I have personally benefited so much by it ever since I was a little girl. Because
when was your first time you went to therapy?
I think my first therapy was back when I was maybe in second grade. Maybe. I was young, very young.
Wow.
So to babe, your point about the theory, there's actually so many scientific data and research that has been studies and actually proven the fact that women, traditionally speaking, are far more emotionally mature and have a deeper, intuitive, quote unquote, more data points to be able to work through and process through their emotions than the male gender, because of the fact that at a young age, all of those experiences like journaling, inner work, talking about emotion, like, oh, honey, how do you feel? Like, those questions are more asked towards little girls than they are to little boys, right? So there's a gender divide that we see inherently when parents are raising children, and what that essentially means for human beings, especially for men at a young age, young boys. It doesn't, when they don't have those opportunities as they're raised, just like you didn't necessarily, that assigns a meaning to your masculinity towards your identity, that it's not safe to talk about emotions. It's not safe to feel my emotions. It's not safe, and therefore I shouldn't have any sort of emotional run-ins, speak through my emotions, talk to other people with what I'm struggling with, right? So some of the indicators to me that I realized that you could have really benefited from therapy was just some of the things that like natural human beings go through. They have traumatic experiences as they grow up. All of us do. And I find it so beneficial, and there's so much neuroscience, data science, all from every single area. If you look at the scientists, like in all of their work, if you go to therapy, you will be able to not only emotionally mature, you'll be able to heal, and you'll be able to be that much more of a self-actualizing human being than someone who is just run by their fear, someone who's just strictly run by their emotions, and someone who literally doesn't feel like they have any control over some of the challenges that they've gone through in the past, right? So when I noticed and when I noticed that, you hadn't gone to therapy, and that was something that was like, there was like an emotional, like, reservation for a strong emotional response, I realized like that's something that wasn't necessarily encouraged when you were young, and it wasn't something that was actually celebrated. Because for me, I believe that therapists should be on our personal board of directors, meaning those people that we talk to when we're going through really challenging moments of life, and who should be on the board of directors to make really big decisions, because they give you perspective. And so to this episode, for everyone that's listening, babe, I think that what's really amazing is that even though it sat on the whiteboard, you still were open to hearing some of the perspective of what you could benefit from. And then ultimately your decision was your decision. So I want to kind of ask you a question, because I know it's a lot. I think it's extremely important to share your perspective of what that was like when you heard the suggestion, and what, like, how did that feel for you? And then how did you eventually come through moving into the like consideration stage, into like the like, okay, let's go for it. Let's find our therapist. Because I know that a lot of guys are in the similar situation that you were at one point, and their partners might be listening to this episode. It might really need to be able to have you be the messenger that they need to hear, that it's actually going to benefit them and it will be worth it.
I think the deepest fear of the masculine, or men in particular, but the masculine energy, is incompetence. Mm-hmm. And I think that the idea that you need a therapist triggers the fear of being incompetent, meaning, why can't I be good enough as I already am? Instead of the obvious logical frame of, why wouldn't it benefit you to just work on yourself with someone there to guide you? So the obvious rational side is like, okay, how is this any different than going to school? You're in school, you have a student advisor. Why? Right. Someone to guide you through college. Mm-hmm. And it makes perfect sense. When your car breaks down, you go to a mechanic. But that's the thing. When the car breaks down, you go to the mechanic. Mm-hmm. So I think it's that dogmatic thinking. And I don't know what part of men, I think it's the fear of incompetence at the deepest level, is if I'm incompetent, I'm not worthy of love. And I think that that's the deepest root. And for me, I think there was another component of it too, which is, I think there was also a fear of like, what am I going to find down there?
Yeah.
Of like, do I want to open that box? I want to move forward. I don't want to go back to all of that stuff that was so traumatizing or painful.
Yeah.
What's up, everyone? I'm Sarah Pringle, and I want to share my experience with my relationships coaching with Alan and Emilia. So first of all, it far exceeded expectations. I was definitely nervous going into it, but they carry such an I got you energy, and we went the direction that I needed to go and dug through the layers that I needed to connect back to the relationships I currently have in my life. The most empowering part was them helping me realize that I have the power to attract any relationship into my life that I want, and that I have the ability to create the most beautiful relationship with myself and understand others at such a deeper level. They're this beautiful balance of yin and yang and masculine and feminine, and I'm so beyond grateful for all the magic that they're creating and putting out there, and all the beautiful, fulfilled, conscious couples that they're helping all over the world.
And then on top of that, when you mentioned it, and you did a really good job of this, but like when you mentioned it, it's like, oh, okay, well, and again, this isn't my whole self, but there's a part of me that's like, well, if I didn't go to therapy, would you still love me?
Mm-hmm.
Am I not lovable as I am? Is our relationship in jeopardy if I don't do this work?
Right.
And if that's true, then am I not good enough again for you as I already am?
Right.
Which again, none of that is rational. It's all very, very illogical. And what's important for everyone to understand in this is it's no different than going to get a degree to go be an engineer, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Emilia and I don't have any, like if you were to look at OCD or ADHD or any of these disorders that are disorders, I don't have any of those. And I think it's a spectrum too. So it's like, where do you draw the line? But yet, and I think this is the important piece of this episode, very simply. You need to understand that Emilia and I don't have any quote unquote issues. Like if you were to watch us day to day, we're very high functioning, loving people who accomplish a lot. We're very effective.
Yeah.
It's not like we have deep inadequacies.
Or mental illnesses.
Or mental illnesses, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that too. It's mental health and therapists are very closely associated with mental illness.
Yeah, that's why there's such a stigma.
There's such a stigma.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas going to get a degree in engineering to be an engineer doesn't have that same attachment to it of like inadequacy, rather than I'm one of them is I'm going to go get more equipped to be more effective, which is exactly what therapy can be. The other one is you have a disorder or something's wrong with you or XYZ
Right.
if you're seeking help. And I think that's just dogma, love, and it's just there. And I do think that the deepest fear of the feminine tends to be fear of safety. And I think the deepest fear of the masculine is incompetence.
Yeah.
And I think that it just triggers your deepest fears, essentially. And it's really important to understand, and we're leading by example in this, and this is really the main point of this episode. Emilia and I are some of the highest functioning people I've ever met, individually and together. And I'm not saying that to be arrogant, but yet we both still have therapists.
Proactively.
And in all honesty, I think what's ironic about this is that I know that I'll have a therapist for the rest of my life, but it's not because I'm inadequate. It's because I want to be more adequate.
Right.
I want to be even more effective, even more productive, even more capable, even more in control of my emotions. And I think that reframe is just critical. But with a lot of the couples that we coach, and I coach people at this stage, I just surpassed my 3,900th coaching call. So I'm coaching people all over the world, and most of them are women, but with the men in particular, there's a huge reluctance to this inner work. And I can even tell. I coached several business owner men, and there's a difference. There's a noticeable difference. And I think part of that is them being coached by another man. But there's a noticeable difference in external focus versus internal work. And that's a thing. And again, that's not true for everyone. I know there's some men that are deeply involved in their inner work, and there's some women that are unbelievably focused on the external at the expense of their inner. And I think that everyone falls on this. It's a huge spectrum, right? So I don't want a blanket statement anything.
Right.
But I do know that statistically speaking, I am going to say this, statistically speaking, the inner work is a massive oversight on the male's part. And I'll be the first to say that because I also am a part of that. And at 26 years old, I really flipped that script.
Right.
And I started focusing on, if I improve myself, then I will achieve these external results versus I'm going to go and achieve these external results. And I think that's a two different lives right there. So,
well, what's interesting is a lot of people actually don't go to therapy because of the second thing that you had mentioned, where like, I'm afraid what's going to be uncovered. I actually wanted to move forward from my pain and instead of backwards into it. So there's a huge limiting belief that a lot of people have around therapy, that you actually are going to go back into your pain, which ironically, in order to move forward, there has to be some degree of reflection and processing from an adaptive state, where that's what you can do in therapy. And that's something that you see a ton of people actually trying to move on and move forward, but yet they haven't properly and adequately appropriately address their past and actually process through it in an adaptive way. So,
and you have to reprocess it anyway from a higher sense of awareness so that you can reinvest it in your future.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone out there watching or listening to this, think about something you did in high school that you would never do again.
Yeah.
Right? You've got one. It's not easy. I do this all
You're
the time in my
being.
trainings. I do this. And in high school, you don't know much and you're pretty arrogant, most likely, because you're young and you got hormones going on and all that stuff.
And you're misguided.
And you're misguided in most cases. And so I do this all the time in book club and trainings, all stuff, live with audiences all the time. And it's like everyone think of something dumb or unintelligent or something they regret that they did in high school. Everyone, boom, immediately they can come up with them.
Right.
You would never do that again, right? Everyone's like, yo, no, I would never. Or yes, I would never. And I'm like, okay, why would you never do that again? Now you're more aware of the long-term consequences of those actions. You are now more intelligent. So you have higher awareness now. Why wouldn't you rewatch the movie of your own life to get all the lessons from a higher distinction place, from a deeper understanding? I mean, I just watched Titanic with you last night, and this is the very first movie that I ever saw in theaters, I'm pretty sure. And I remember being on the floor. I was like 7 years old, and I just watched it again in the 25th anniversary of this movie, and I reprocessed the whole movie from a much higher perspective, from the perspective of internal family systems, from the perspective of cognitive behavioral therapy, from the perspective of coaching and parts and different things, emotions, emotional regulation, XYZ. And so that's what you can do in therapy is you can go and you can reprocess your past from this new awareness, and then you can gather all the lessons up and invest them into a much brighter future. And if we could see it that way, and at the end of the day, I do know this to be true, the only way this is going to shift is when therapy becomes cool.
Yeah.
It needs to become cool to be a therapist and to do therapy, and that is shifting, so I'm grateful for that, but it's definitely not fast enough.
Definitely. I love my therapist. Shout out to you, Christine, you rock. And all of the people that are in the mental health professional world who are really trying to make this world a better place. And for all of those partners who really have done that work and who are trying to have this conversation with your partner. Like, again, if you're listening to this and you're the person who maybe your partner really does believe deeply that you could be a beneficiary of the work that's put in therapy, that means that they love and care about you so much so that they don't think that anything's wrong with you or that you're defective or that you're incapable of XYZ. It's because they want to see you thrive. And that's the thing that's what it was for me, for you, babe. So it's been really cool to see not only how serious you took, the opportunity that was on the table, but now how you're able to contribute so much more into the world as a result of that. So we are the coolest therapy consumers, if you will, that exist. I deeply believe that. And for everyone that is listening and clicked on this episode to really see like, beep, 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 does my partner need therapy? Everyone could benefit from therapy. And this, hopefully, in us sharing our experience, can really help you see, well, you never know unless you try. That's the thing. And maybe you have tried and maybe it didn't work out. Maybe it's a different modality that your partner needs, right? So like IFS, ACT, and CBT, I knew was going to help you because I had a deeper awareness. If you need help kind of figuring out what is a proper modality for you or your partner, or maybe both of you guys, please reach out to us. We have that awareness and we can help you notch that in.
So the last thing I want to share is a story of one of my clients. So her name is Helen, and she told me that I could share this story. So she didn't get along well with her mom when she was growing up, and her mom actually thought something was quote unquote wrong with her, had behavioral problems or whatever. And so her mom, to try to fix her, quote unquote, brought her to therapy.
Right.
And now she's 47. She's amazing. And she's like, thank you, Mom, for thinking something was wrong with me, because that was when she started to really learn herself, when she started to really understand people at a deeper level. And now she's flourished so much more because of it.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes for the people that did have challenges in their childhood and someone did recommend therapy, I've coached a lot of people at this point. A lot of them actually say, thank goodness that bad thing happened to me, because that's what brought me
into therapy
to a therapist. And that was when it opened up a whole new world for me. So if you are with someone who is closed off to this world, whatever, whether it's coaching or therapy or self-improvement or personal development, the inner work is where all the gold is.
Oh, yeah.
It really, really is. And it is nothing short of an absolute travesty that more people are not doing the self-improvement work, the inner work that really is going to help us all become better human beings. Because if there's anything this world needs more of, it's more deeply fulfilled, self-improved humans. And so, yeah, thank you so much, babe, for the suggestion. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And I've got my next call on Wednesday of next week, and that's the one thing that's the one thing I never move.
Yeah, same.
And again, at the end of the day, last thing here, an hour where you're reflecting on your own life.
Oh, you are so deserving of that.
Yeah. And you're
So
sitting there
important.
talking to someone who is there to entirely talk about you and listen. And
what a gem.
What a gem of that. You get to watch the movie of your own life and then rewrite the script every single time you do therapy. And so, yes, pick a great therapist. Yes, be discerning with what modalities and who. If it's not the right fit, move on. That's okay. Make sure it feels aligned. And yes, it will get uncomfortable at times, but that's where all the growth is. So again, does your partner need a therapist? The answer is hell yes.
Yes.
Doesn't need.
Yeah, baby.
Really should. Yeah, baby. Okay, so we got to jump because we're way over time.
I love this episode.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Thanks for sharing your vulnerability.
Of course, sweetheart. Of course. So we have a relationship talks event. We actually just came off our February event about dialing in your love languages. If you missed it, that is your fault.
Was amazing.
Just joking. Yeah, no, it was good. It was good. March 9th, we have our next event, Creating Financial Goals with Your Partner. So I remember the very first time Emilia shared her financial goals with me, and I immediately was starting to reverse engineer them, and now we're a team, and I've actually upped my goals since then. So this can be a really, really awesome thing. If you picture your financial life, and if you're headed in one direction while your partner's headed in the other, you are going to grow apart. One of the top things that couples fight about is finances. It does not have to be the case. Let's get on the same page. Let's get in this room, completely private. Join us. The registration link will be in the show notes, and we hope to see you there. This is our 21st event in a row, so 21 months in a row, and we're not topping anytime soon. We're not stopping anytime soon.
In addition to not stopping, we are not stopping Service Saturday. So Service Saturday is where Alan and I make sure that our calendars are completely cleared for you. Yes, the listener. Yes, we want to meet you. We want to provide that safe space for you. It's on the calendar. We have 30 minutes allocated on a private Zoom call where you and your partner, say if you guys are struggling, you're not on the same page and you want to work through something and have, the two of us helping you guys out. This is a safe space where you guys can talk about the things that you're struggling with. And it's been so incredible, the breakthroughs that we've been able to have with couples and conscious singles that have joined us on that every single Saturday. This safe space is for you guys. All right. So we would love to meet you. We would love to have that booked on our calendar. And the link will also be in the show notes for you and your partner. We would love to see you there.
And maybe coaching is one toe dipped into the pond, so to speak, toward therapy eventually.
Yeah.
Because coaching can be a little less intimidating at times than therapy in some cases. So this is a good chance to give it a shot.
Yeah.
Give it a shot. Okay, as always, we got to jump here. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the next episode. As always, it is not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is Lazaros88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.